came from you all, and you're not black, you're Moors. Get over it. What you find is that when people, because when you start finding out the truth about Iberia, i.e., Europe, etc., those are noble families of Europe. Your concepts have been all wrong. That's why Noble Drawley says your concepts are all wrong. And so when the hybrid Europeans took over Iberia, the concepts are that many of those old castles, etc., in Germany, Scotland, they don't even know that Scot actually means dark.
Well, you got the last king of Scotland, and who played the?
No, they tell you even, like when you mentioned that, Dr. Naila, they tell you in different ways. But if you're not aware of this history, it doesn't dawn on you that you were the sovereigns or the monarchs that were overthrown. And the monarchies came from the pharaohs. It was the matriarchs. When you really study the history, not from the hybrid perspective that he's told you, those monarchs that were overthrown are really the matriarchs of the Moorish Moabite nation, which came from the ancient pharaohs of Egypt, that you call Egypt. All of them are Berber descent, Berber linguistic groups, Bantu, Mandinka, etc., all over the world. And the sooner you get real about the real politics and have a real comprehension and understanding of the jurisdictional powers of ancient Egypt that you call Egypt, expand the world, not just on the east side of Amexem, the entire world. When you're looking at Tennessee um, area, Tennessee, Kentucky area, looking at Lower Egypt, it's a fact. That's the fact. Get over it. You look at those mounds and the pyramids all over the America. All of those are ancient, and some of them are even older on this side than they are on that side. So don't look at them as separate. Look at them as just being the land separated by a great earthquake. That's all. Mississippi was built by hand. By hand. It was not a natural river. It flows both ways, according to the seasons. While we build mounds all along it. It's also dealing with the fresh water routes up to the Great Lakes, which were also built for fresh water for the entire Western Maghreb. That's the truth. Get over it. One of the points of reference for conquest for the hybrids is to steal a lot of Moorish history. And the Whiggamore Party is a perfect example. Even the name of the parties, Whig or Moor, they put on wigs to imitate the Moors. They've been stealing your estate for the last couple centuries. Get over it. They've been trading places. So now, we've done enough damage on the planet. It's time to start telling the truth. Start fixing things up. Start learning of your higher self and your lower self. Start moving to the dark side and start moving to the higher self. So your higher planes of light are really the dimensions. They're states of mind. And so when you're coming into fourth and fifth and sixth dimension, it's a consciousness. It's an energy. It's a consciousness and a connection to nature and the operations of reality. Not a place to go, country to be reached. So heaven is a state of mind, the activation of the pineal gland. And as the pineal gland activates, you will enter into what they call more dimensional consciousness. And of course, that's conjoined by the operations of Saturn, Uranus, and Jupiter lining up, etc., what they call the activities of the coming again of Jesus or the Son of God, symbolizes anthropomorphically actually the entry of the energies of the Aquarian age and the dying of the priesthood whose spookiness and misrepresentation of religion had its root in the Piscean age. All that means anthropomorphically. So you're dealing with the cosmo, return of Jesus, etc., or justice. There you go. Get used to it.
Now, one of the things I found interesting also when reading this book is where we get the term April Fool,
Yes.
and the fact that when they were running the Moors out of Spain and how they lied to them.
They call that they're running the snakes out of Ireland.
Well, no, when they told
and in Ireland and Spain, keep in mind
when they told them you can go, you're gonna have to leave, but they put them when they put them on the ships and then told them, and they looked back and they saw their homes being burned up,
mostly women and children,
and then they burnt the ships.
Yes.
Set the ship. I don't know whether they jumped over the sides or whatever, but they had the people out the ships and they burnt the ships up.
They promised that they would not kill women and the children. It was mostly women and children. And this is during the time of Boabdil.
Here we go.
Go ahead.
Says knowing the Moors were let me see, up to this, okay, on March 31st of the same year, a proclamation was issued formally expelling all Jews from Spain. The next day was April 1st, a day which was to be forever remembered in the traditions and lexicon of our culture. Up to this point, the Moors were conquered, but had not been officially expelled or sanctioned. According to long-standing tradition, on April 1st, 1492, the Spanish executed a diabolical plot against the Moors. Any Moors who remained in Spain at that time had been told that they could return to their home country of Morocco. Knowing the Moors were a suspicious lot, the Spaniards provided sailing vessels and docked them at port. When the Moors saw the vessels, they trusted the Spaniards were not lying and proceeded to take their belongings and families to the ships. As the Moors left their homes behind them, the Spanish set fire to them. The ships either set sail or were burned as well, thus leaving the Moors as the first victims of what became known as April Fool's Day. It has been a celebrated tradition since that time. Although the Moors were completely defeated in Europe, it was a persecution that could only get worse. So, April Fools, we think some of these things are these cute little, just like, where people celebrating Thanksgiving thinking it was something bring families together, when these things that we're celebrating we're celebrating our own demise.
Yes.
And so you keep that energy alive when you celebrate it.
And it's not so much just that, is that they're not aware of what the celebration is because they've been lied to about their own history. And this is back to in the beginning when we open up the treatise and we talk about Napoleonic Wars. When you get in Napoleonic Wars, for those of you who have some scholarship, you recognize that around the world, wherever Napoleon went, he would shoot the noses off of all the historical stone statues to hide or to destroy the Moorish relationship so that they could take claim of being the ancient ones, even ancient Greece. And so you see them start making this common statue of some woman, etc., with a broken arm, etc. And you see that duplication all over the place. And then all the original statues, they shoot their noses off.
I've seen that.
Oh, yeah. Destroy the face features, even with the Sphinx. And that's all over the world. That's why it's important to understand that in order to study American history, you must know Iberian history or the history of Europe.
There's a question.
They go together. They absolutely go together. But they have been separated in the minds of the people so that you will not find some of this stuff that we're sharing with you today. And of course, this will take you even further into deeper history, including the Moorish Empire in Iberia or Europe. And that's very important for your concepts to get clear on American history, because you can't know American history without knowing Iberian history, because it's absolutely connected. But people have been trained with this idea of what they think foreign is.
Mm-hmm.
And when they're talking American history, it doesn't dawn on them.
We're not Bayesian, so
it's not dawn on them that Europe and America's connected politically, absolutely.
It's the same thing for the folks that kind of thought that because they call themselves Protestants, that they're no longer under Catholic influence.
Yeah, exactly. Here you go.
It means we protested, but
we're Protestants
protesting.
are protesting Catholics.
Yeah.
You know, and even, with people not knowing those operations, thinking that that is a separate religion, when actually it's a subsection of the Catholic. And all it is them fighting among each other.
Right.
That's all. And it was the priesthood, not necessarily people. The priesthood fighting over spoils that they were they were robbing from Egypt. That's what it is. They're robbing. They're fighting over spoils that they robbed from Asiatic African countries among themselves, and that's how those orders, Protestant, Methodist, Calvinism, and all of those different sects, actually break off of priests among the Catholic order that were fighting amongst each other over spoils, having nothing to do with spiritual development whatsoever. It's all political. That's not a condemnation of people's beliefs in the sense that people look at it, is that they really don't understand that they were political activities and nothing to do with spirituality whatsoever. They just use Jesus as a front. Jesus is more or less a password for political conquest purposes and mental conquest warfare. Totally misrepresented. Unfortunately, but that's true. Hopefully, many of the hybrid European sons and daughters will start telling some of those truths to free not only the mental servitude that many of our people have been suffering, but many of their own have been suffering from for the last few centuries. Because all of us on a large scale are generally out of order because of misinformation. So again, when you're looking at the Constitution for the United States, when you're looking at the hiding of the original 13th Amendment, etc., and the 20 sections, etc., and you'll see also why the members of the Roman Curia and of the Circuit Church and Chancery of the Bar Association, etc., were banned from holding office. Now you'll notice that almost every person, man and women, who are claiming to be congressmen and senators of the United States, etc., are barristers and lawyers. Totally unconstitutional. Now you understand why politically and economically North America and Canada, etc., is in the political shape that they're in right now today. And you'll also know why these continued unending wars are being perpetrated around the world, especially in Asia and Africa. And all of this is still rooted in the Napoleonic Wars. You just give them a different name.
When I think of how how few of them there are that are ruling the many.
That's why it's important for them to burn books.
Right. And but again, I always come back to the Dark Crystal.
Oh,
if you have not,
Jim Henson's
yeah. If you have not seen, I don't know, I know you saw the original, but the remake.
I have the collectors.
Yeah, the remake that came out in 2019, I think it was 2019 or 2018. Was Netflix. It's nine episodes. I think it was 9. Anyway, I binged it all because I needed to see the big picture. Sometimes you just need to watch it. And when it concluded, all I can say, There was the Skeksis and the Gelfins. The Skeksis are them, and the Gelfins are us. It was a few
Symbolic.
Skeksis, right? Symbolically, a few Skeksis that were ruling and sucking the energy and the life
The
force
essence.
and the essence of the Gelfins. Who, when you
And
looked at them, they didn't all look the
that's
same.
multiple stories at the same time.
Yeah, they didn't look exactly the same, but they were the same. They were all the underlings, so they were all the 99 percenters.
Consider the higher self and the lower self, right?
Right.
Consider the hybriding. Consider cannibalism against children. The essence.
Mhm.
The vampirism that's been going on for a couple centuries that the masses have not known that even exists. A lot of things that those animated series actually present.
But the point, because I see the comments not only here, but you hear the conflicts that are within us, and
Yeah.
we're wondering why we're not further along, and we can't see the fact. Well, some see the fact of the matter is we're not any further along because we can't help from fighting each other.
Yeah.
So
It's
if
schism.
we're no, yeah, so the schism. So if we're fighting each other, if we're majoring on minors and doing things that undermine in the whole overall, we never. It's one step forward, two steps back.
Remember this. Let's go back to in relationship the few ruling the many, right?
Right.
Now you already know, and this is common knowledge. This is not like mystery stuff. It's available to anyone, right? From the hybrid Europeans operations, and from policies taken from the Napoleonic Wars, right? Introduced into the Whiggamore Party and demonstrated in the philosophy page of the establishment of the General Education Board. This stuff has never been secret. Never been secret. Um, so let's look at the philosophy page, and this is common, of the General Education Board set forth by John D. Rockefeller and Frederick T. Gates. And you all are familiar with that name, Gates, even to this day, who's trying to stick you with nanoviruses. 1902, philosophy page for the founders of the General Education Board. So how was their plan to dumb the people down to present this conquest of the many by the few, which you see taking place right now, coming from members of the Skull and Bones and Roman Curia and the Circle Church and the Chancery. All these members are members of the Roman Curia. This is their philosophy. In our dreams, we have limitless resources, and the people yield themselves with perfect docility to our molding hands. The present education conventions fade from their minds, and unhampered by tradition, we work our own goodwill upon a grateful and responsive rural folk. We shall not try to make these people or any of their children into philosophers or men of learning or men of science. We have not to raise up from among them authors, editors, poets, or men of letters. We shall not search for embryo, great artists, painters, musicians, nor lawyers, doctors, preachers, politicians, statesmen, of whom we have an ample supply. The task we set before ourselves is a very simple as well as a very beautiful one, to train these people as we find them to a perfectly ideal life just where they are. So we will organize our children and teach them to do in a perfect way the things their fathers and mothers are doing in an imperfect way, in the homes, in the shops, and on the farm. That's the mission that the General Education Board is structured under the operations of what's called animal husbandry. That's how they've been training these people since 1902. And so people wonder how the few are ruling the many. There you go, right in the philosophy page. How many parents, in the name of loving their children, have sent their children to these schools year after year, given them, gotten degrees, and wonder why they can't compete in the real world, and they've never even read the philosophy page for the general education board that they're delivering their children to. And I just read it, and it's a paragraph. Is it hidden, Dr. Naila?
No.
Did they say what they're going to do to these children? Is it very clear?
Very clear.
So all you need is a few generations of this, and this is what you have today. Isn't that one of the reasons why we do what we do here at the House of Reawakening Minds? Is it not understandable that as soon as you start exposing this information that you're going to get trolls, people who have been benefiting from this destruction of humanity, who don't want people to have this information, who attack what we're presenting as if we're making this stuff up? This is documented. This is the real history, the real chronology, documented for all to research, and more connected to this.
You know what? It's I'm going to interject something that might be crazy, and you know the conversation we had with one of my spiritual daughters the other day.
Yes.
And so this comes to mind when she spoke about what her daughter spoke to her about her ex, and who he was in a previous life, and what he had come, to do in this life.
Yes.
And I'm convinced when I look at some Moors, they look like us, and in all senses of the words, if you look, but they're not who they appear to be.
Exactly.
Some of these have come back, and reincarnated.
The battle goes on.
They may now have taken on the persona.
Then Duali said to you, he said, be careful, Moors. Some of your own brothers and sisters, your own people wearing turbans and fezzes will be trying to put you back into slavery. Which means don't look necessarily. This is just like when you're reading Peter Moon. I talked to Peter, in the early 2003, 4, somewhere in that area. And there's other hybrid European sons and daughters who are telling the truth. Right. You had a European daughter on here on your show,
Michelle Gibson.
Recently. Michelle Gibson. Many of hybrid Europeans are telling the truth. The interest for all of us to do is to do what? To shed those ancient hatreds, tell the truth, and start healing humanity. We cannot preserve civilization on a lie. And the other deal is, Dr. Naila, in reference to what you were saying earlier, how so few have been ruling the many. The indicator is that the many have been under this mental servitude spell of misinformation. And when that fake or the de facto platform of degrees of knowledge is used to try to solve problems, they never fix anything because they're operating from a false paradigm. And of course, people, because of ego, often are reluctant to admit that they've been wrong or that they've been played. However, they don't have any knowledge to fix anything. So again, we share information with people who have open minds and open hearts. And for those who are the coming generations, who have been deceived by many generations before themselves, both by the hybrids and by the aboriginals, etc., who have other agendas other than honor, that they can have some fundamental truths to operate with, and they can clean up the rest. We'll give them certain fundamental truths. What we always present to you, your self-obligation to study in order to become who you are in a more realistic manner. And do not seek beliefs, seek knowledge, because the people have been destroyed for lack of knowledge. And so most of what we show you can be traced, can be researched, can be cross-referenced for yourselves. And you'll see, again, the motives of many people that come up against this knowledge when it's exposed to you because it upsets their little Negroite institutions that have been funded by the corporate U.S. corporation franchisee states of corporations to keep you under the black codes. So whenever they tell you, if we bring an issue to you, diversity of nationality, the trolls will start rising because you'll be cognizant of the fact of when Drawley say enforce the Constitution, he's referring to judicial obligations and treaty obligations. And those controversies around the world are argued from a consular perspective. Then, if you understand that, you understand Act 1 of the Divine Constitution and Bylaws given to you as a pattern. It's not opinion, that's fact. So get in mind, people who don't want you enforcing treaties and international law want you to continue to suffer under a color of law. Keep in mind, Raleigh told you, you're not colored people, so you don't do colored things. Color does not mean complexion. Color means fake law, fake positions, fake jurisdictions, prima facie, a semblance distinguished from that which is real. We'll look it up in a law book. Those are those who know law, like Raleigh told you in the Divine Warning.
Questions, comments?
You know, truth is uncomfortable, but we're not trying to make people uncomfortable. We're trying to make life better on this planet for all of us. Because we've been under fraud for a few centuries now. We need to end that crap and dismantle the dark priesthood who's been governing over you. And you need to know that their major corporation has been bankrupt since 2018. Stop funding them. Time for you to start taking responsibility.
There's a lot of, like I said, a lot of things that have been covered up. But going back to Dark Crystal, which is the series that we're talking about, a couple of people have asked, what are we talking about? Netflix called The Dark Crystal, and it's a Muppet. You know, you have to look at the Muppet show, Muppet movie.
Remember the Muppets? His name was Jim Henson, and Jim Henson did a lot of the
Sesame Street
animated Muppets movies and stuff. Years ago, Jim Henson passed form. One of the major animated movies years ago, late 80s, late 80s, I think it was called The Dark Crystal. And with the Dark Crystal, the crystal implies both crystal, but also is pyramidal. And there's also the shard that caps the mound that's actually like the eye of the pyramid, if you kind of understand that. Even when you look at the astrologers, she has one eye. Mm-hmm. So they're talking about the people of the eye. So when you talk about the people of the eye, you're talking Ethiopia. Or that's the people of the eye. Okay. Or even when you see the people in the modern hybrid Europeans who are using dark magic, they will blacken an eye, meaning that they're complicated.
How about we would see a lot of these people covering up the...
That's what that is.
They would be covering up...
That's what that is.
Okay.
If you don't know the true history, that you're standing on Egypt, you get it out your mind that Egypt's just on that side. If you keep thinking that Egypt's just on the east side, your concepts are wrong. Capital Dominion.
And if you think that it was always a bunch of sand.
Yes.
Because it used to be lush.
Meaning the future proves the past. You just need to know some of the past to recognize what's going on now. When the concepts that the people have that a lot of these things are happening in a vacuum, they are not. People who are governing on Midgard Earth are governing not based on what you think they're governing on. They're governing on a record of ancient Moabite Canaanite history of Saba, codified as Egypt and codified as Jew. It, it's Hikupta, not Egypt. Hikupta. It ain't Jew, it's Saba. And Saba are Sabians. The Sabians are you, the real people of the land, the Moors. That's the truth. Get over it and start studying your real history and unraveling the confusion of the politics. We just gave you a few keys, that's all. Don't get mad, get wise.
But the point I do want to make is that the end of that particular, at least 2018, 2019, whatever it was, version, remake, what I loved about it was that even though these people, these beings all looked different, but they were all under they were all under one. They were the elephants, and excuse me. But when they realized what they had in common, they joined forces in spite of their differences and overcame the Skeksis, the few. And that's what the point I'm trying to make about us as we Moors. If we don't stop fighting, if we don't find common ground with one another, with each other, we will never, we'll always be in this cycle of wondering why we're not where we used to be. Because we need to come together. We need to overcome our differences and see what we are, embrace our commonality.
Once these people know, see, this is the whole deal. The commonality is that they're all Moors.
Which is
the fact that as long as we keep on allowing the nom de guerre to be presented as legitimate pedigree bloodlines, it will create confusion, it will create civil litter mortuus, and it will support the civil litter mortuus de facto platforms that have been destroying civilization. We must start telling the truth. Now, Joel A. Rogers as an example. This is one of the chapters.
The Negro has more Negro ancestry in aristocratic European families.
Because we are the European families. We're the Aboriginal European families. Now you're dealing Phoenicia, you're dealing Iberia. And by covering that up, they're able to cover up the history here in America. It's all connected. It's all related. There are your coats of arms. Europe. Here are your coats of arms. Europe. Here are your coats of arms. Europe. Here's your coats of arms. Europe. Here's your coats of arms. Europe. Coats of arms. Europe. Coats of arms. Europe. And it goes on and on. You're not told that because they don't want you to know the connection. They don't want you to know that you are the monarchs who were overthrown. However, Diwali came back to restore your nationality and your birthrights, and you need to know it expands much further than a lot of people are telling you. However, he desires for all of us to come back into the constitutional fold of government moral as our forefathers were and our foremothers were, with the honors of our mothers and fathers and respecting all human rights on planet Midgard, etc. Come back and go back to the state of mind of your ancient mothers and fathers, because you were the rulers, you were the white rulers who were overthrown. And white is a status, not a complexion. Get over it. While we keep telling you, read in your law book, free white persons. It does not mean Caucasian race, never did. History's been misrepresented to you by people on both sides. So get over that too. And stop being biased and prejudiced and then accusing other people of it. Once you learn some of your real history, it won't be necessary for you to have what you would call low self-esteem. You have no reason to have low self-esteem. You need to be proud of the illustrious history of your ancient mothers and fathers. But you also need to be responsible for us falling away from that illustrious status, dealing with the black code situation, the frauds that have been foisted and imposed upon humanity, and the color code caste system that must be dismantled. Now, take that and roll with it.
Now, here's a question from Jamie Dodger. Is it safe to say that Jamaicans and other Caribbean people are Celtic or Celtic Iberian, Sephardic, Moorish Jews?
Exactly. What do you think you are? That's who you are. Mandinka and Bantu. That's who you are. Stop. Those names of the different territories, most of them aren't even over 150 years old. All of you are Moors. Get over it. Entire Western Hemisphere. All of you verbal linguistic groups, Mandinka, etc. You're all Moors. Get over it. Stop looking at the political territorial jurisdictions that have been created since European hybrid colonial operations in the Western Hemisphere under colonial hegemony. Those political jurisdictions are only artificial constructs on paper. We're all the same people. Get over it, brothers and sisters. Thank you very much. You're home. No matter where you walk, to the north or to the south, you're home. Thank you. Don't let them play that green card crap on you. That's only politics. That's not reality. Get out of that false matrix. It's part of the reason the Moorish Divine and National Movement exists. Read chapter 47 of the Circle 7 Quran. That'll give you your basis. And we're talking civics, not religion. We're talking actual political, geographical, and facts, and political jurisdictional facts, not beliefs. Those are facts.
Okay, T-shirt chief says, how are African immigrants classified when they become citizens of the United States?
United States is a private corporation. Any person that allegedly becomes a citizen of the United States becomes stock, because it's a private corporation. It's not a country. That's a fact. For those of you who doubt it, do research in corporate operation and corporate bankruptcies, and you'll see that the United States Corporation went bankrupt 2018, and it's a private corporation belonging to the Jesuit order of the Bishopric of Rome under the Pope of Rome. It's a private, for-profit, human trafficking corporation that has been presented under pretext as a country since 1861. There you go. The land here that you call country is Morocco. Get over it. It's the Maghreb. And we're not just talking about evening salat. And if you want to key to some of the research, you'll hear Juali say the term, you'll say, you're really Jews. We don't use that name or that term because the Europeans have been using it, meaning it's misrepresented. But we know that we really Saba, or that you call the real Jew. Everybody knows it but our people. But Jew is a cover up for Saba. Keep that in mind. Because really there ain't no such thing as Jew. Really Saba. And for those of you who doubt it, look up Sabian. Sabean. Sometimes they'll substitute the E with an I. You want to look at the linguistic groups? Berber, Bantu, Mandinka. There you go. And all of you are part of the family. From the north to the south. And keep in mind, Jew is not a religion. Jew is, you really come from Ivri, or what you people falsely say Hebrew, which is also false. It's Ivri. It's those who cross the river. This is during the time or before the great earthquake. Those of us who crossed the river with the super devere or the dividing of the land between Ham and Cush. So you Cushitic people, all of you, Cushites, etc., are Ivri on this side, meaning those of us of the Cushites and the Moabite Canaanites who crossed the river. So those who came to the Maghreb are Ivri, or what you call cover up, is called Jew. Saba, get over it. Stop lying to yourself. And you got a daggone thing to do with religion. It has to do with what was done. Those who crossed over. Those of you over here, yeah, you're the true Jew. You're the true Saba. Get over it. Got nothing to do with belief. It has to do with the real heirs of the land. So by the hybrids covering up the history to steal your estate, they also have condemned themselves in doing so. So they gained the whole world and have lost their soul. That's what they're dealing with right now. They've gained the entire world, deceived the entire world, and have lost their soul. And a few of them, recognizing what's coming cosmically, are trying to redeem themselves by telling the truth, trying to get on the right side of history. I understand it. And many of those adepts around the world understand exactly what I just now said. A lot of demons among our own are angry about what I just now said. Because they got to go too. They're part of the problem.
I want to read a little bit more about from this.
Share some more.
Yeah, I'm gonna
whatever comes to your mind, because really it's important, because you already know it's so much.
And there's a lot of stuff you've said and stuff, but when it's backed up, a lot of times whoever says it depends on.
But also other people always knew this,
right? But it's
just that this literature ain't been shared with our people. You see what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Go ahead. They're pointing to party books and get high books. Whatever. It's the truth.
Let me see. Okay. As the United States declared its independence, Morocco was aggressively interested in pursuing a dialogue and recognizing this country because it had a vested interest in slave citizens and relatives. They were essentially suing for peace. Although Morocco was eager to establish formal relations, the United States was busy with their own war and other problems. They did not respond. After all, normal diplomatic channels had been exhausted, Morocco seized various Americans and their ships and held them for ransom. This got the attention of the Americans, and it worked. A peace treaty was worked out and guaranteed that any U.S. citizen in Morocco would be declared a free American citizen if he presented himself to the U.S. consulate and demonstrated his citizenship.
Now, see the consul venue? That's diversity of nationality in all treaty law around the world. See how important history is, Dr. Naila?
Mm-hmm.
Outside of that venue, you're out of order.
Yeah.
So therefore, if you're outside the constitutional fold of government, you won't take that position, will you?
Yeah.
So that means you voided your position, don't you? Now you see how the black codes have destroyed our people under the 14th Amendment?
Yep.
Trying to be somebody that they're not and become stock for the United States thinking it's a country. It's all trade, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's agreements and trade, isn't it? Didn't Obama say that treaty between Morocco and the United States is the oldest running treaty in the world?
Yep.
Isn't that apparently the foundation of the politics?
Yes.
So in an international venue, isn't that logical? That the oldest running treaty in the politics of the world is the foundation of your general world's politics, and how come these people don't know about it? Why? Because they thought it was a religion? It's their estate. All of our economics is tied into this.
So a peace treaty was worked out and guaranteed that any U.S. citizen in Morocco would be declared a free American citizen if he presented himself to the U.S. consulate and demonstrated his citizenship. It preserved the rights of all Americans in Morocco. In diplomacy, there is a principle called reciprocity, which means that citizens of different countries will be treated in kind. The U.S. Secretary of State clearly stated in his own handwriting that any Moroccan national would be treated the same as any U.S. citizen in Morocco. In this respect, the so-called apocryphal legend of Drew Ali is astonishingly backed up. The above encourages us to seriously consider another story passed down through antiquity. This concerns a meeting that Drew Ali had with President Woodrow Wilson. Noble Drew Ali claimed to have written a letter to President Woodrow Wilson and asked him for the Moroccan flag. The Wilson connection is once again ironic because President Wilson was a known KKK sympathizer who endorsed the racist movie Birth of a Nation, which featured a white supremacist by the name of Ben Cameron. There is an account that Drew Ali actually met with President Wilson and asked for the flag. When Wilson and his people asked him what flag he was talking about, Ali told them it was hidden in their vault. After going to the vault room, all the president's men brought out all sorts of flags, but he told them it was much older. As they dug deeper, they came upon a red flag and said that it was the flag of Morocco. Ali is said to have stated, "I am here for the Moorish flag, that which you call a cherry tree." The full account of this alleged meeting is a little suspicious because it indicates that the Moroccan flag was red with a green star. At the time of George Washington, the Moroccan flag that would have been given to the president was only plain red, some say to honor the blood of the Prophet of Islam. This indicates that a black faction may have been embellishing what happened because the green star was only added to the Moroccan flag around or after this meeting with President Wilson was said to have occurred. The ostensible reason for adding a green pentagram was that the international seafaring community had problems with the plain Moroccan flag as it confused mariners who already had their own established use for red flags. The embellishing of the Drew Ali story was not really necessary if they had appealed to a higher truth. A more astute observer would have realized that the green pentagram added to the red flag is even more significant. Accordingly, Morocco adopted the pentagram, which they called the Seal of Suleiman, and colored it green to honor the color of Islam. Without actually observing all of the actual history concerning the bizarre synchronicities involved with the cherry tree, it is very hard to say how much of what occurred with it is intentional. It is quite clear, however, that some outside force was orchestrating a synchronicity that could not easily be explained. This will become clear as the story develops. After his alleged meeting with President Wilson, Drew Ali continued his life mission, which was to lead his people out of a mental poverty that had put them at the bottom rung of the ladder. His method to lift them was his own version of Islam. He also noticed that the only successful members of his race were those who imitated the conquerors of his people. There were no, there was no great imam or sheikh who taught anything that was indigenous or respectful of their original culture. In this vein, he became their leader and created quite a stir in the world of the Roaring Twenties. If you care to read the newspapers of the day, you will find that Drew Ali commanded such a following that he was closely monitored by the government as a potential power that had to be reckoned with. There were even huge revivals that outdid Christian enterprises. In fact, Drew Ali's meetings included stirring renditions of Muslims, that old time religion borrowed from the trite evangelical Christian ditty you likely heard. The movement was huge. Ali was billed as a healer too, and was said to produce miracles in his own right. By most accounts, the man seemed to be humble and unpretentious, although some have tried to defame him. Mostly everyone ignores Drew Ali. In the background of the religious dogma was the Moorish Science Temple, which has also been portrayed as having other names. In the midst of all this excitement and hoopla, there was one very penetrating truth. Drew Ali had a reputation that has surpassed that of any black man in the entire history of America. He was not only dangerous to the powers that be, he was in a position to wield a considerable amount of power. As is typical in any scene of power with Homo sapiens, his lieutenants and adjutants were all poised to make a grab at this incredible power, particularly if he was to suffer incarceration from the authorities or to die. Into this thriving scene of Black America rallying behind Drew Ali as an international religious leader entered one of the most intriguing and dubious characters in history, particularly Black Muslim history. This man's name was Wally Fard. I'm going to stop right there.
Mm-hmm. You know, and you'll begin to see the politics, particularly when you go into the FBI papers and you see the intrigue and the subversion that took place in that whole area of the late 20s. Then you'll recognize why Drew Ali, one of the counter moves that he made was to adopt a religious affidavit to the Moorish Holy Temple of Science to protect the estates of the Moors or their homes. He set up a trust. People were to put all their stuff in trust to be protected. And of course, during that time, they murdered him because they already knew that that motivation or that momentum was killing the stock market. And this is again why the U.S. corporation company went bankrupt in 28, etc. Same year that he adopted the affidavit. And then you see what took place with Delano Roosevelt in 33, with them using all birth certificates to refund the United States Corporation Company again. And that went bankrupt in 2013. Then they started again, and then went bankrupt in 2018. Then all of a sudden, this strange sickness appeared that everybody got a mask on for. If you think this stuff is not tied together, you really need to study history.
And for those who are asking the question, I'm reading from Synchronicity and the Seventh Seal by Peter Moon.
You can show it. It's the cover of that book.
Hold up a little bit. There.
And this is the cover of Nature Knows No Color Line. Now, another point is, it's not that this information is not available to people, it's that people who have interest in keeping our people in servitude and ignorant don't want this kind of information out because it kills a lot of those corporate Negroite, corporate funded 501c3 churches, mosques, and synagogues that actually come under Skull and Bones that's been keeping this fake black code paradigm operative that's been keeping the U.S. stock market alive. That's why they want you to keep calling yourself black and Negro, because it's all stock. It's not really the real people of the land. Real people of the land are Moors. They are the Aboriginal, indigenous people, proper heirs of the North Gate of Maghreb, of Mexim, etc. That's the fact. And all treaties, the oldest treaties, are by your mothers and fathers. So go back to the state of mind of your ancient mothers and fathers and enforce the treaties, i.e., thus the constitutional obligations that the hybrid Europeans have to those treaties, etc., and to the Republican form of government set forth via that constitution enforcing the treaties. Now that's a fact. Get to work, y'all. Stop pretending you don't know.
Here's a question.
And keep in mind, while our people have been playing games, the Whigamores have been fighting among each other over your estate. They're just hiding behind the Democratic and Republican Party. They're the Whigamores. They got to wear wigs, but you don't. Because you got them antennas.
So, here's a question. Antoine Darrell says, "It's respect. I'm originally from Bermuda, but now living in England. Do you know anything about the GOM bays? GOM-BEY apostrophe S. Goom bays?
The Bombays.
It's Goom with a G.
Yeah.
Can you talk about that?
Yeah. Go back to the Picts, the Moors, and the Dubs. And when you're looking at England land, you know you're still home. You're looking at Iberia. And when you're looking at the islands, you're looking at the same. All of it's yours. You need to understand that. Same like when those of you in the islands and you're talking about the Maroons, still talking about Moors. The Maroons are Moors. Get over it. They're just simply brothers and sisters among the island people who try to preserve and keep the culture.
Here's a question. Why don't, quote unquote, they reveal that it was the Moorish womb men who defeated the Brits in the Revolutionary War?
Here we go. Aren't we back to Moorish history? Your connection to the land. Act like you know. They just hide it by calling us Indians. None of it's a secret. It's just that people need to know the difference between the nom de guerre that were used to separate us from each other, and the different territorial names and tribal names which were used or emphasized to make us think that we're different people when we're just simply the same people of different territories, tribes of nations. Tribes are simply no different than you would call the different nation territories or what you would call the states territories. You look at the tribes in the same perspective because the state territorial jurisdictions were based on tribal rules. It's a duplication and a reflection of the same. And so when you look into Whigamores, and you're looking at the Whigamore conscience wigs and the cotton wigs, i.e. the Republican Party and Democratic Party, just look at the Honesty Confederation, and then look at the Powhatani Confederation, etc. It's just simply a copy of what was already here.
I think the interesting point with regard to the D's and the R's is that when you, in terms of, I think a lot of folks have to see in this short 100 days what those who did actually go out and cast a ballot for what they did is probably it's very apparent. But I don't think as many realize, not maybe the ones here in this, we're very astute here on this chat, but I don't know if the masses realize that Mr. T, we'll just call him Mr. T. So he wasn't really, like you said, definitely wasn't on the D side, and the R's didn't respect him because he was, a lot of them were just as involved in in the mess as the D's. So he came for a totally different. Like you always said, he was chosen or
He was
appointed, assigned, and so forth.
Remember, the corporation is dead.
Right. Who assigned him?
You can look at it from a perspective of divine fate. And that's included on a secondary level with generals and admirals who have been operatively constructing a plan to counter the operations of the Roman Curia operations that took place at the coup d'etat of 1861, March the 27th, with the overthrow of the Lincoln administration to undermine the republic. Now, you know, like you hear Dr. Nail about Q and QAnon that they're talking about
17.
Today. Do you know that started during the Lincoln administration and not recently the way people think it is?
Really?
That started during the Lincoln administration. It was just reactivated by Mr. T.
Okay.
That's the truth. The more you know about the real history, it's not only going to shock you, but you need to. It's like this. For people to ignore what's going on is to ignore their economic and political fate. And you're not going to hide from this because the dark priesthood is willing to sacrifice all of you to maintain power. So you think that because you're not involved, that you're not involved, you got a wrong thing coming. All you're going to do is make yourself easier grass to cut by ignoring it. I suggest that every man, woman, and child get involved with confessing their own, because what you don't confess, they plan to steal and liquidate, and then remove you so that you can make no claim. That's honestly what their missionary operations are right now, politically. And if you think that ignoring these matters gets you out of it, I'm not even going to argue with you. You will find out soon enough, and you're not going to go to no new generation with this crap going on, thinking that it's not going to become a reality for you. Because you're if you don't die tomorrow, you'll live through this. You're going to live through what's coming. That's a guarantee. You're not going to ignore it safely. Let's put it that way.
I think I heard the pastor that was talking to Greg saying something like it was akin to paying the hitman to kill you last. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's basically what it is. That's basically kind of what it is. Those who ignore what's going on now is ignoring it at their peril. You know, and you know, I'm not condemning people. I'm just observing truth. People are afraid because in their heart of hearts they know that Romans are cold-blooded murderers, and Rome has always done things to undermine anything that deals with justice. Or they keep crucifying Jesus over and over again. Jesus means justice, and so they hide and they think that because they won't take a stand or position of opposition to the corruption, that the corruptors won't sacrifice them. They're just simply easier food. Because Rome is ruthless. You better believe they're ruthless. And not because I say so, they're going to prove it to you. They've been proving it for these last few years. And if you notice that everything they've been doing has been more and more blatant relative to censoring you, cutting you off in the economics, hurting people literally, bluntly in the street, no justice, no justice, no justice, and you haven't figured out yet that they're not your friend and that they're not your government, that they're the enemy of humanity.